We all get mighty wound up and worried when tax season approaches us. I say, we need not worry as our friendly CPAs are always there to help us. Are you worried about being audited? Why? Let Uncle Sam not worry you. Today we have a famous CPA of this region, namely Mr. Adil Baloch, who's getting ready to talk to us about the IRS audit. CPA Baloch is the founder and chief CPA of Accurate Records and Tax Services. In the studio today, attorney Ramesh Khurana of the Khurana Law Firm will moderate this segment. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the Capital Forum. My name is Ramesh Khurana. I am attorney at law. I have my office in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And I have the great privilege to present before you today Mr. Adil Baloch, who is a very knowledgeable and experienced CPA and having his office in Maryland State. Welcome, Mr. Baloch.
Thank you very much.
Now, I am going to ask you a question which is a very scary question, and that is the IRS audit. Nobody wants to hear about the IRS audit. Nobody wants to know that IRS is going to come and knock at your door someday. So you just want to stay away. Maybe there are certain means by which you can avoid red flags so that you don't have to face audit. But sometimes I have come across certain people who have faced audits for the successive 2 or 3 years. So can you please explain what is an audit and what are the red flags which we can avoid?
Sure. Your question obviously has several parts to it, so let me see if I can address one after the other. First of all, what is an audit? In one word, audit is random. But to make it to that pool from where they pull out a random sample, you have to do something. You have to work hard to get to that pool, actually. If your tax return has some very obvious lows or highs, obviously it's going to get pushed to a side where somebody is going to take a look at it and will decide whether there's something that warrants a deeper insight into it, and then that's how it takes place, and that's where you go. Now, there's two parts to that process as well. Maybe the highs and lows on your tax return are actual facts. There's nothing wrong with them, in which case you should not have anything to worry about. If you get audited, everything has been documented properly, you can back it up, and it should not bother you at all. It should not worry you at all in any cases. Sometimes what happens is that, let me talk about the different levels of audits as well. I think
I think that's very important. Yes.
So the most basic level of audit, the lowest level, is a correspondence audit. You file your tax return, the system matches your tax return with all the documents that are in the system. All the calculations are correct. There are no mathematical errors in that tax return. All the 1099s, W-2s, all the income and expenses and everything has been reported exactly the way it was reported by third parties or independent people to the IRS directly. Everything matches. You're good. In some cases, there might be a reason where, let's say you work for someone as an independent contractor for a couple of months. They forgot to send you a 1099, or they sent you a 1099, you never received it, got lost in the mail, or something happened and you forgot to report that income on your tax return. That 1099 will be very much available in the IRS database if the person who actually issued that 1099 did not fail to send that 1099 to the IRS. Now there's going to be a mismatch between your tax return and the IRS database. What the system will do is system is going to recalculate everything as if that 1099 was part of your tax return, and it's the system itself is going to send you a letter which is called a correspondence audit. It will give you the opportunity to prove the system wrong. If not, if you agree with it, you're much better off just signing it, agreeing with it, writing a check with it, and then sending it back. That's the first one. That's your correspondence audit. Something happened. The second one, which is the scarier one, obviously, is the one where you get a letter in the mail, the IRS telling you that we are auditing you. We have decided to audit your tax return because we find certain things in your tax return to be out of place or out of the ordinary, extraordinary. And that's when, if you have reported everything appropriately, there's nothing that you have tried to hide, everything is backed up properly, documented properly, you shouldn't have to worry about that audit at all. It's just
Now,
a matter of
let me
providing
ask
the
you a
back.
question here. I'm sorry to interrupt
It's
you,
okay.
so that it becomes really meaningful. Now, let us say that you are my CPA and you are preparing and signing my tax returns. Whether this audit letter is going to come to you or just to me or to both of us.
So what happens is that for me to be able to receive any correspondence from the IRS simultaneously as you do, I have to have a power of attorney in place with you. If I have a power of attorney with you, and I have actually on the power of attorney itself, there's a box that you check that says that you should be receiving copies of all the correspondence that goes to the taxpayer, in which case you will receive a copy of everything that goes to the taxpayer who has a power of attorney with you. I myself am a strong proponent of that. I actually try to do power of attorneys with all my clients across the board, just because I want to stay ahead of the game. And in many, many cases, the client might be out on vacation. They might have a work assignment that they're traveling for. There is a letter that requires you to get back to the IRS within 30 days, and you're not home back for another 45 days. I know that eventually I will have to deal with that problem.
Right.
So I might as well have everything come in. My office might look like a post office, but I really don't mind because it helps me, it helps my client, and that is something that is unique to what I do.
I think your approach is very professional. I like it. Yep.
Thank you very much.
So that any important correspondence which is coming from the IRS is just not ignored,
Correct.
because it's going to be very expensive for any individual.
Correct.
Right. Now, you said that they send out a letter. Is it possible that IRS agent can call an individual and tell him or her that we are going to audit your accounts on such as a date, and how an individual should respond to such a call? Sometimes, these are all fake calls. It's happening.
For the most part, they are fake calls. Even if it turns out to be correct for whatever reason, they might call you and they say, "Okay, we're going to audit you." Fine, if you're going to audit me, there's obviously nothing I can do about it. I just have to deal with it. But you should still wait to see something in the mail, because at the end of the day, that's what it means. That's what will trigger an audit. A letter being sent to you in the mail, in writing, and that will tell you what your rights are, what is expected during the course of the audit, and what is it that you're expected to do throughout the process.
Now, on that note, when this audit notification letter comes from the IRS, whether it comes by a first class mail or it comes by a registered mail or a certified mail?
So there's several different steps of the process. The audit usually, the notification for audit usually is just first class, it's just usual regular mail. Now, if there is an intent, again, which is a little bit outside of the subject, but if there's a notice of intent to levy or put a lien on your account, in some cases, when it gets to that point where they are going to do something with your account or with your business, that's when they make sure that they send you a certified mail and you sign for it. So they know that you actually got it.
Okay. Otherwise, it's coming just by first class.
It comes just first class mail. It's an envelope which is pretty different looking, so it's very difficult to miss. It looks very important when you see it. An audit letter is maybe because I'm in this profession, I've seen so many of those. An audit letter is very easy to recognize. It looks different. It's not a regular correspondence from the IRS that might have your refund check in it. It is quite different than that. You can tell that there's something different happening here.
So, what's your recommendation for the audience if somebody receives an audit notification letter, whether he can basically face the audit by himself or he should hire the services of a professional?
As far as I'm concerned, my advice would be, if you can fix your flu by yourself without going to a doctor, if you are sick and you need some antibiotics and you cannot get those over the counter, you'll have to go and get a prescription from the doctor. I would consider the audit exactly the same. There are things when you go through the process, there are things that an ordinary taxpayer would probably not know, especially their rights. There are certain things that might straddle between your right to privacy and the right of the auditor to audit certain things. Also, there is a method, there's a very scientific method on how you present the records when you're going through an audit. You want to make it as easy as possible for the IRS auditor to go through the whole motion, understand how everything is laid out, because you have to remember, an IRS auditor yours is not the only audit they're dealing with. They have probably hundreds, maybe thousands that they're dealing with. So they have only a certain amount of time, and they're trying to get through your audit as quickly as possible. Only a professional understands how to lay the records out, so it is presented in such a way that the auditor can walk himself or herself through those records, understand where everything fits in, and then as quickly as possible get through that report and then hopefully give you a clean bill of health.
Oh, beautifully explained.
Thank you.
So, any other tips you would like to give to the individuals who might be exposed to the audit situation? I am talking about the audit situation whereby you are receiving that scary letter, which looks totally different, and not by the simple mail audits. Those are pretty much simple.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, in cases where you cannot avoid the highs and lows on your tax returns, you can't help it. It should be very easy for you to justify. It should be very easy for you to maybe able to back it up yourself. But as always, it is always a good idea to at least have somebody guide you through the process. There's only certain people who can represent you in an audit. The tax attorney, the attorneys, the CPAs, and the enrolled agents are the only people. Anyone else might be able to prepare a tax return for you, but they cannot represent you. So you have to remember one thing, that there's a reason why there's only certain people who are representing you, because the IRS knows that these are the people who have gone through the training and they know how to bring the records to them and how to bring everything together. Now, you had mentioned one thing about multiple years audits. In some cases, you get audited for 1 year and they find something significantly off on your 1 year tax return. What happens is that you get into what we call a mushroom audit situation. 1 year audit, they found something completely different. Now you're being audited for 2 more years. Those situations are very easy to get into if you do not have the help of a professional who understands the process and who knows how to keep it contained and just get done with 1 year.
So, is there any time limit or the statute of limitation up to which your returns can be audited?
For the basic time frame is 3 years. That's the most basic one. But then again, in the interest of time, I don't want to get into any more details. But 3 years, it could go up to 6 years. In some cases, it could even go up to 10 years. If there's a fraud, there is no statute.
Okay. So, great. I think cameraman is indicating that our time is up. So, I must thank you for coming to our studios and clarifying some of the complex issues relating to the audit.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate your presence.
Appreciate your time.
And again, last word of wisdom to the audience: whenever you have some tax related issues, which are of course subject to complex laws, always talk to a competent CPA. Thank you very much for being with us.